And then you took over the group in 1987, and that's when things really started moving towards mass production.
Right, we really started developing the transmission in a small circle. And we quickly realized and saw that it would be a tough and bumpy road. Because the components we wanted to use and needed for the transmission were not available on the market. There was nothing available. Nothing. In the truest sense of the word, nothing. Of course, we had the requirement that if we wanted to do this at all, the transmission had to fit into the same tractor. Back then, the 824 with the partial power shift transmission from ZF T7300, it had to have the same connection dimensions, the same width, the same height, and it had to be mounted from the back, meaning one transmission out, another transmission in. And that, of course, is a tough requirement for a developer. It was really a straitjacket, where it wasn't easy to breathe, I would say. The heart of the transmission is the hydrostatics. Back then, there were essentially two paths. The company ZF, specifically Mr. Meierl, was also working on and developing a continuously variable transmission. However, they chose the path of using smaller hydrostats back-to-back, meaning a pump connected from one side and the other side. These were series parts, commercially available series parts, with an angled disc design where the swivel angle was only up to a maximum of 20 degrees. Consequently, there was a lot of mechanics involved. Gears, mechanical gears. In this case, there were 4 half-planetary gears that constantly had to be shifted up and down. Long story short, we chose a different path. Very powerful, large hydrostatic units with minimal mechanics. The key requirement, however, was that the units were both A, truly powerful, and B, and this was crucial, had very high efficiency. If it hadn't had high efficiency, we wouldn't have had the slightest chance in the market with this system. And back then, we only had the Volvo units. But Volvo refused to collaborate with us, so we were forced to develop it ourselves, and the Volvo units were only up to 32 degrees. We said, that's not enough. We have to adhere to the installation dimensions, and we can't manage that. So we decided to go from 32 degrees to 45 degrees, and from Volvo's 320 bar maximum pressure to 550 bar. And even if you're not a technician, you can imagine what that means. What kind of forces are at play here? And we succeeded. We carried out the development ourselves and implemented it ourselves. After that, we entered into a collaboration with the company Sauer Sandstrand in New Münster, where we continued to develop together from a certain point onwards. They were the experts, and the collaboration was very productive. And we succeeded in developing hydrostats with very high efficiency rates. The overall efficiency was 92%, which is unique and remains the basis for our competitors who still use this technology today. Long story short, let's get back to the transmission. We developed new hydrostats here. We had to develop new valve technology for the closed circuit. We had to develop new control technology. We had to redesign the control and regulation of the transmission. To achieve seamlessness, if you look at the tractive force graph, we are able to drive and implement every point on the tractive force graph. And that means we need an infinite number of gears to achieve stepless driving. We were able to implement it with the step motor and the corresponding valve technology. It worked. Another major focus was the noise issue. It's not just the noise from the hydraulic, but also the structure-borne sound that gets transmitted. We did a lot of pioneering work in designing the housings and the elastic suspension of the entire drive unit within the housing.
Then the first gearboxes were on the test bench, passed their tests, and then it was off to the field. How did you manage that?
So we ran parallel, both on the test benches where extensive trials were conducted. We even had to build and develop some of the test benches ourselves, and later in the field. And it was clear to us that if we wanted to keep this project secret and present it at AGRITECHNICA in 1995, we had to keep it under wraps. Otherwise, the whole thing would fizzle out. And it was clear to us that if we wanted to test it practically, we couldn't do it in Germany. So we found a way and went to my old homeland, the Czech Republic, to my brother's 8,000-hectare farm. There, under strict confidentiality, which we managed flawlessly until the announcement, we conducted practical tests for a year and a half. We conducted measurements, comparative measurements with the same vehicle, same tires, same equipment, same weights, same field, same drivers. We carried out comparative tests regarding fuel consumption, and we were truly competitive. And perhaps worth mentioning on the side, this also came to the attention of Dr. Herman Fendt, heard about it, and drove 850 kilometers to visit us.
He was already 84 years old at that time.
And he watched the operations and was simply thrilled. It was quite touching.
That was a very good collaboration back then with Manfred Lober, who tested a 926 Vario for the first time at the DLG testing center in Groß-Umstadt, and then did a complete 180, reporting very positively about the Vario transmission. Very important, a neutral instance for us back then. And then the development of the new series continued, and so on and so forth. But the 926 made its first appearance in 1995 at AGRITECHNICA. It will forever remain a cult model in Fendt's history.
Exactly right.
And how did the experts react to our new transmission?
We were, of course, both as developers and those responsible at Fendt, both in sales and in engineering, astonished at how the competitors reacted. After the various technical presentations we held publicly, They were so frustrated, in the truest sense of the word, that they wanted to tear us apart. They simply didn't believe it would work or amount to anything. They provocatively said that the transmission would disappear from the market within 2 years because it was worthless. Naturally, we resisted and argued accordingly. And then, after about 1 or 2 years, when the farmers could suddenly drive the vehicle and recognize the advantages of using the Vario transmission, they snatched the tractors out of our hands. And that was the point when alarm bells started ringing for the competitors and they began developing their own or had suppliers develop them.
A wonderful story that started with the new 926 Vario at the Hanover Fair in 1995. A cult model, it will always remain so. Thank you, Robert.